everyone, thanks so much for having me. My name's Oliver. I've been with PriceLabs for about 2 years now. So I handle a lot of our user onboarding, a lot of our account management, all those good things. I'm talking to all of our biggest customers, helping them set up their profiles. So I've definitely seen a lot of the kind of pricing strategies being used this year and kind of what's been working out, especially in 2020, as we go into 2021, all those good things here. So quick agenda. I'll talk a tiny bit about PriceLabs just so you have a slightly better idea of what we do. Then we'll dive right into these pricing strategies. So there's a lot of them. Do ask questions in that Q&A. If there's anything kind of relevant as we're going, I'll try to field those the best I can. Mike, if you see any relevant, feel free to jump in as we go here. Then we'll save the rest of the session for Q&A here. So a tiny bit about PriceLabs. So we are a revenue management platform. We were started back in 2014. So at this point, we've been around for 6 years, going on 7. We have a super diverse team. So we're available everywhere in the world. Our team is mostly spread out between US and India, but then some team members kind of mixed around Brazil, Portugal, and France. So we do have that kind of international coverage. If you're based in Europe, if you're based in the US, we do have support available at all times here. Currently, we're pricing just over 100,000 properties. Currently have customers in over 100 countries. Crazy to see how quickly that kind of creeped up on us. But just for clarity, we do offer 3 different products. So we do have dynamic pricing, which kind of focuses around the automation of your rates. That's where we're internalizing as much market data as possible, extracting all the trends that we see from the data, and then applying those trends to your prices automatically. But then we do have separate products, our market dashboards and our portfolio analytics. Market dashboards being a product that focuses on giving you data for any area that you choose. So you can think of that more as an AirDNA sort of product. If you're familiar with them. And then our portfolio analytics being a new product we just released, which gives you kind of data about the bookings that are coming in for your specific portfolio here. So portfolio analytics, more of a key data product. If you're familiar with them, I know they've been on the market for a long time here. So if you are interested in internal analytics, market analytics, or any of that dynamic pricing, that is all there. And quick question coming in here, so let's definitely address it. A question asking, where is our data coming from? So for the market dashboards, this is currently all Airbnb data, no VRBO data as of now, but that is something that we're hoping to add this year. So most of the data that we have that kind of feeds our algorithms, that's all Airbnb and Booking.com, and then VRBO is coming up pretty soon here. Alrighty, let's dive right into it since there's a lot to cover here. This is going to be a long list of tips, some descriptions in here, so bear with me, ask lots of questions. First one, very basic recommendation is to open up your calendar for future dates. So 2021 in particular, we've seen a lot more hosts blocking off all dates more than 6 months out than we've ever seen before. So potentially our guess is that lots of folks are worried about maybe taking those bookings for the summer that might have kind of bit them last year when they took, lower priced reservations. Then demand really shot up, prices for the summer skyrocketed. I know a lot of you had your best summers yet. My honest opinion is to not be worried about taking these far out reservations, but to protect your calendars further out with different minimums that you can be setting. So definitely, I would recommend opening up your calendars for the summer, opening up your calendars for the holidays, for the winter, all those, but making sure that you're protecting your calendars with things like longer minimum stays, with things like just purely higher rates for the summer season, since we do expect there to be a lot of kind of pent up demand coming up for those future dates here. So instead of blocking off those calendars, unless you have a good reason to do so, simply set higher far out minimum prices or higher minimum stays for your far out dates. And those are all things that can be automated with PriceLabs here. So just to give you an idea of what that might look like in our system, you might have a strategy where you have a standard minimum stay. Let's say that's 3 nights here. What I'm essentially suggesting is saying, hey, open up your calendars more than 180 days in the future. but instead of a 3-night minimum, maybe require a 7-night minimum just to protect things, get some of those longer bookings in there, filling up the bulk of those dates, and then you can open them for your shorter standard window the closer you get to that booking date here. Awesome. Next one, using niche OTAs to target longer term travelers. So this is something that has come up a ton in a lot of my calls. The users who do have the best occupancies, I've seen a lot of them kind of taking demand from places they typically wouldn't here. So I know Streamline integrates with quite a few OTAs. You also have a lot of partners in Streamline, such as Rentals United, who are able to push your rates to even more channels here. I definitely recommend taking a look at some of those channels. I know some channels have recently popped up, catering towards traveling nurses, professionals who are usually looking for those longer term furnished accommodations. Definitely take a peek there. There is demand to be had, so maybe a different pricing channel might be appropriate there. And then with that, something cool here, of course, PriceLabs does send rates over to Streamline. After Streamline receives your rates, you can always set that channel premium. So if you have a channel where you're targeting longer term stays or a different type of clientele, you can always kind of adjust those rates to optimize them for that demographic that is booking there if it's a little different than your typical Airbnb or Vrbo traveler here.
Looks like there's a question, Oliver, and I do want to confirm that we have direct integrations with quite a few niche OTAs, regional OTAs, luxury OTAs. So please check the marketplace for what those connections are.
Yep.
All right. Do you want to address that question?
Oh, sorry. Looking at it now here. The customizations that you just showed, changing minimum stay for last minute dates, can this be set per unit or per group of units? And that's a great question. So I know a lot of you are professional property managers that are managing a lot of listings in your portfolio here. All of our customizations can either be set on the listing level, the group level, or the account level here. So if you have, let's say, one group of listings that is more, larger listings, those cabins and villas, you could group all of those properties together, set up your minimum stay strategy. Do you want to take maybe a longer minimum stay for your bigger properties? You can have another group for condos and your apartments, set shorter minimum stays on there. And then, simply set these settings once for each group. That definitely saves a ton of time. Then if you have any outliers, let's say you have one condo, all of these settings are applicable, but the owner needs a 7-night minimum stay because of that local HOA that might be dictating that. You can set specific settings on that listing level. So that listing would have a 7-night minimum set for it, but the rest of the customizations could still pull from this group level. So super easy to set things in bulk and then get more specific wherever you do need to get a little more specific there. Awesome. Loving the questions so far. Definitely keep those coming here. And Mike, do interrupt if I ever miss any here. Okay, next one, optimizing rates for your last minute booking. So this year, especially last year, the trend is definitely translating this year. What we've seen is that the lead time for most bookings has greatly decreased kind of across all markets. So people are booking their stays a lot more last minute, especially in urban markets. Where people would have already been booking their, summer vacation dates. We haven't seen as many of those bookings start to come in. So it really looks like lead time is compressing. A lot more last minute reservations. So those last minute discounts you've been using might not be as applicable as they have been historically. So if, for instance, all of the bookings in the market are coming in the last 2 to 5 days, let's say, you definitely don't want to be applying those 20-30% discounts for the last week, since there's a lot of demand that might still book your property at whatever that current rate is. So my recommendation, always look at the prices of the market. I'll kind of go into a little more detail on this in a future slide here. Look at the prices for the market, make sure you're competitive for that date range, but make sure you're not saying, hey, we're 3 days out, no one's booked my property yet. The demand might not be there. So I'll show you in a few minutes here where to check demand for your market, how to see when those bookings are coming in, so you can determine when that last minute discount should start kicking in. So in a lot of markets, when that demand is so high last minute, especially in markets that are currently in their high season. So some ski resorts, I mean, as we start moving towards the summer for most markets, I do see a need for last minute premiums. So if you are in a high demand market that's reaching, let's say 80, 90% occupancy or so, there is a case for actually increasing your rates last minute if you haven't received a booking yet, since there might still be demand for just that limited supply that's left here. So I'll definitely jump into that. There's a later slide that kind of goes into those high demand strategies here. All right, next one to note, optimizing your cancellation policies. So with COVID still being a little bit up in the air, people's travel plans aren't fully settled yet. We're not sure what's going to happen with vaccines, with restrictions, with lockdowns, all those things. We have been seeing a lot of the kind of more generous cancellation policies receive a larger portion of all bookings in the market here. So in our market dashboards tool, let me pull that up real quick. So quick overview of this tool, how it works. You basically give us an address that you want to analyze and a radius around that address. And then we would basically pull data from Airbnb for all listings in that market that you've shown us. So here we're looking at kind of very downtown Nashville, kind of along Broadway here. And this gives you a ton of data on both future prices, data on what dates are people booking, how far in advance are people booking, how long are they staying. But it also gives you a lot of data on the policies and fees that people are offering here. So at the very end of the market dashboards, we do have cancellation policies. You can track what other hosts are doing in your market in terms of cancellation policy, and you can track the difference between demand for, let's say, moderate versus strict versus flexible. So how this works, in blue, we're showing the percentage of listings that offer a certain cancellation policy, and then in orange, we're showing the percentage of bookings for that cancellation policy. And a lot of the time, so what you'll see here, the reason that this might look a little off, we aren't filtering by bedrooms yet. Takes a second to apply that filter, so I won't do it just now. But typically something to keep an eye on. First, apply that bedroom filter, make sure you're comparing apples to apples here. And then if you do hover over any dates, you'll see what that average rate was for those bookings. So you'll see, hey, maybe people are booking a strict policy because on average it's a little cheaper, versus maybe prices are jacked up for those flexible properties. Or maybe all professional managers in your area are only offering strict policies and people are booking more of those professionally run properties in your areas here.
Another quick question, the analysis of cleaning fees, et cetera, do we only have access to our own market or can we see any market?
Yes, so with market dashboards, how this tool works is it's not purely for markets that you have listings in. You simply create a dashboard based off of an address. So if you were interested, let's say here in Ellensburg, where I'm at, you can select any market, move this circle around wherever you want, and wherever you want data for, leave that circle there. Any listings that we find, we'll provide data for. So if you are looking to invest in a new market, you want to take a look at what the trends are there. Definitely a great tool for that. All of our data, super recent, refreshes on a daily basis. So either if you have listings somewhere, you want to track how things are changing, or if you're looking at a new market, you can definitely order a dashboard there. And again, that is a separate product from our dynamic pricing. So if you're only looking for market data, I'd honestly recommend this tool. It costs $10 per market per month here. So pretty cost effective. And you don't need to use our dynamic pricing to have access to our market dashboards here. Great question though. All righty. Next one. So most of you, I know whenever I talk to Streamline customers, you guys are typically pretty sophisticated and you're already doing all of these things. But the most basic thing you should be doing, if you're not updating your prices on a regular basis, let's say you're not down in the weeds in your pricing, really looking to optimize everything, at a minimum, I would recommend setting higher prices for weekends, the high seasons, any events, and any holidays in your market here. So in our market dashboards, we do show a lot of that data. So if you don't want PriceLabs to automatically do that for you, you could just get a quick peek of the market, see what some of these demand trends are for your specific area. Set these things up once, maybe modify them throughout the year as you go, but you definitely don't need our automation if you are doing things manually. Take a peek here, and that can just push you in the right direction for, hey, where should I be making these adjustments? So a few things to point out: our market dashboards, we show you the difference in terms of occupancy trends. So this market we're looking at right now, Nashville, you can see that in terms of occupancy, weekdays typically run at about 30% occupancy. Weekends are running at around 55% or so. So as you can imagine, with a difference in occupancy, you definitely want to be adjusting your prices to be charging a little more. We'll show you average rates for what others are charging in the market. So you can see, hey, that correlation is definitely there. On the weekdays, everyone's dropping rates. On the weekends, they're all shooting up. And then here you can see kind of what that rate distribution typically looks like. Where in Nashville, I mean, this is one of the more drastic markets I've seen, but it's over a 50% swing between your weekdays and your weekends for pricing. So I'll talk about how to kind of optimize for weekends more a little bit later here. But then in addition to weekends, I definitely recommend taking a peek at this chart. This will show you pricing for all future dates. And a lot of the times there's specific dates that might have higher prices here. Here we see that July 12th, that entire weekend, shoots way higher than the surrounding weekends. Not exactly sure what's going on, but something to look into and see, hey, where are people charging more? Also, where are more bookings currently happening? So, of course, we're looking at far out dates. Not too many bookings coming in for the summer season yet here, but you can see, hey, there's slight spikes every once in a while. So you can see, hey, these particular weekends here are seeing a lot more demand than the surrounding dates. That might be a good indicator to see, hey, what events are going on, or at a minimum, say, for whatever reason, there is more demand. Let's, set a higher minimum price, increase my pricing here just to make sure I'm not missing out on something. Otherwise, if you are using a system like PriceLabs, we would go in, we would automatically detect that demand and automatically increase your rates there for you.
A question about the dashboard. Are filters available that further parse the market? Some examples: number of rooms, bathrooms, guests, etc.
Yep. So currently the only filtering is number of bedrooms based, but that kind of helps in most cases. So before looking at any of the data, I definitely recommend you use this bedroom filter to say, hey, I only want to look at, let's say, 3 and 4 bedroom listings. Click apply, and that would regenerate these charts to stay applicable to what you're looking for. Otherwise, a quick note, if you are a PriceLabs customer, if you're using our dynamic pricing, these market dashboards definitely jump into a lot more data. But if you just want that basic data that's showing you, hey, this is pricing and occupancy for all future dates, that's something that is included with each listing. So when you're reviewing your prices, we do have this neighborhood data tab here. It takes a second to load when I'm sharing my screen, but that definitely dives into a lot of the trends. What are average rates going forward by bedroom type? What are occupancies for future dates? We would be using that data to optimize things on our end, but just a good reference to definitely have here, and that would be data for each of your listings. So we're showing you the properties that are kind of geographically closest to yours. You can see, hey, what listings are being tracked to come up with the rate recommendations and the data that's shown here. Again, review prices and then neighborhood data here. Awesome. Loving the questions though. Thank you. Perfect. Number 6. This is honestly a big change from previous years. The recommendation here is to revisit your competitor pricing monthly at a minimum. So in 2020, something we were definitely seeing, we'd have people go in, they would set their rates, they would set very specific, let's say, fixed rates in PriceLabs. Then the entire market would change and their fixed rates were just no longer relevant. No one's booking their properties because they're priced way too high for the market. So since we've been seeing so many shocks, markets going into lockdown, restrictions on indoor dining, outdoor dining, wherever you are, whatever the restrictions are, that's definitely affected travel. And lots of property managers have been responding to those shocks by adjusting their rates. So if, let's say, you go in right now and you say, hey, I'm setting my rates, my minimum stays, everything based off of the trends that I see. Those trends are very likely going to be very different a month from now. So I definitely recommend revisiting that data at least monthly, taking a look at your rates, re-optimizing, making sure everything's still looking okay there. Alrighty, now pricing tactics when approaching the high season. So this last year, we had a shockingly healthy high season. I know lots of property managers I'm talking to, they're telling me, hey, this was the busiest high season we've ever had. I was personally kicking myself in the butt a little bit. I have a few units I'm managing where I took 6-month leases when everything was looking bad, missed the entire summer, which did end up being super hot where I'm at here. But when you're approaching your high season, I do believe this high season will be at least as good as last year's. I think lots of people have, additional savings from COVID if they are in a position to have, savings here. So I think more money will be spent on travel. And I think hosts this year will kind of anticipate that, set their rates a little bit higher and not be caught, with their pants down when summer starts here. So first and foremost, setting higher rates early on. So if we take a peek at some of this market data, if you're looking at kind of prices that are currently being charged in your high season, you're saying, hey, here, let's actually filter this by bedroom type. So it does look a little better here. So if you're saying, hey, the 75th percentile for my market, it's only at, okay, perfect. Let's say the 75th percentile for your market is sitting roughly around 275 or so here. I would definitely try to price myself towards the high end of the market, especially if there isn't too much demand kind of creeping up for those dates yet. So price yourself towards the high end of the market for now, set higher minimum rates just to make sure you don't see, hey, we're finally hitting the period where more people are booking my market for the summer, and all of a sudden your rates just go offline all at once. So once we do start seeing more rates for the more bookings coming in for the summer, I would start relaxing my minimums a little bit if no one's booking at those prices. But for now, definitely be setting higher rates, definitely be pricing towards the higher end of that market there, and kind of reevaluate as we do get closer to the high season. Now, this is what I was saying with keeping your dates available further out. I would recommend setting a higher minimum stay for the summer for now, and then slowly kind of decreasing that minimum stay as you get closer. So now, we're still 6 months or so from the summer. I would be setting week-long minimums, kind of at a minimum here, taking in any of that demand for those longer stays for those dates. And then as we get closer, you can fill in with those shorter bookings. So what you don't want right now, you don't want someone to go in, book your high season, book a 2-night weekend there that blocks you from taking any other reservations, makes the rest of the weekdays a lot less desirable there. So I would be setting those higher minimum stays, especially for the weekends. Then as we do get closer, as more bookings for those short stays start coming in, you can start relaxing those. Restrictions a little bit here. So let me pull up our market dashboards really quick and show you kind of where you can see some of that data for how long people are booking their stays for. So for any future dates here in our length of stay and booking window trend, here you'll see any occupancy that's already on the books, and then we'll show you the number of bookings made for each kind of made for each length of stay. So here you can see, hey, way out in August, there's 7 bookings for a length of stay that's between 7 and 14 days. So here you can track, hey, in my high season, what bookings are getting booked. It looks like the majority of bookings are those longer stays. So you definitely want to keep your calendar available for longer stays, start decreasing that as we do see some of those shorter bookings, make up the majority of the market here. So this data, of course, not great since not very many bookings are coming up here, but yeah, message me if you do want some data on a different market. I can definitely walk you through. Otherwise, I'll send out some instructions for how to run these dashboards on your own here, see what's going on.
Oliver, we had a couple questions filter in.
Yes, sir.
First one from Randy. Your thoughts on high season and oversaturated markets, excess inventory?
High season and oversaturated markets. Yes. So if you're in a market where, let's say in the high season, you're only hitting about 60% occupancy, let's say 60 or 70% occupancy in the market as a whole, because there's so many competitors in the market, I would just set competitive rates, definitely staying towards the high end of pricing for now. And then as we get closer, relaxing those rates a little bit. So if you are in a competitive market that doesn't fill up, definitely make sure your rates are still competitive for the high season. Price a little bit closer to that 75th percentile, and then we can adjust as we go here.
Second question from Christine. Is there a way to automatically gradually decrease the minimum nightly stay, or is this a manual update?
Yes, so the minimum nightly stay will automatically decrease in PriceLabs here, but that is all purely rule-based. So basically, it's based off of how far out the booking date is. So what's a bummer, you can't select all of summer. You can't say, hey, June through August, set a 7-night minimum. But as we get closer to the summer, start dropping that minimum stay. These settings here would apply to all future dates. So this would say, hey, anything outside of, let's say, 120 days, set that 7-night minimum. And then as we're within, maybe 60 days here, let's drop that down to a 5-night minimum. And then as we're within, then between 120 and 60 days, we would have that 5-night minimum come in. Between 60 days and 5 days, we would have these top minimums come in. So those would apply to all future dates here, and not just the summer. For the summer, if you do want, let's say, a different minimum stay for a very specific time frame, you could go into update overrides. You could say, hey, between, let's say, August and the end of September here, set a 5-night minimum stay. That is something that would just be fixed, and you would have to go back in and adjust that as you get closer here. But great question, though. All righty. Perfect. And then last thing for the summer. So if you are setting that higher minimum for your high season kind of as a whole, let's say you're saying, hey, I want to charge at least $350 a night in the high season. The one thing I would recommend is to still look at any high demand dates for the summer, because $350, that might be a good minimum, except for this date here where something's going on, everyone's booking and everyone's increasing their rate. So if you do have that blanket higher summer minimum, still look at those events that tend to be pretty prevalent in your market. Look at all the major holidays, all those 3-day weekends, and definitely evaluate, hey, where are people pricing for these, since those tend to be the dates that get booked first here by far. Awesome. And then a few other things that you can do as you're approaching the high season. So in PriceLabs, we have occupancy-based adjustments that will automatically adjust your prices and react to any spikes in demand. So this is something that's particularly helpful for identifying those further out dates and kind of automatically reacting to bookings that are coming in, instead of you having to monitor, hey, wow, I got a ton of summer bookings, let me increase my rates. This would essentially automatically do that for you here. So how this tool works, we have two options. You can either adjust your rates based off of the occupancy of an individual listing. So how that would work, you could say, hey, if there's any date that's between 90 and so for all my dates between 90 and let's say 120 days out, depending on how full I am in this day range, adjust my prices based off of these occupancies. So you could say, hey, if I'm sitting totally empty, 90 to 120 days out, let's set a 5% discount. I'm not too worried that I'm not getting bookings, but let's start discounting my properties. And then if, let's say, 40% of these dates here start getting booked, let's start increasing my prices by 10%. As we get more bookings, let's make those increases a little more drastic here. So here, based off of how full you are, X number of days out, you can have your rates automatically adjust to kind of help you meet your pacing. So if you're seeing, well, I'm totally filling up for the summer already, That's not a great sign. That's showing that, hey, you probably are leaving a little bit of money on the table. So let's have those kind of premiums automatically kick in. So alternatively, you can adjust your rates based off of the occupancy of a group of properties. So let's say you have all of your luxury houses in Scottsdale, and you're saying, hey, if any future dates start getting booked, let's automatically start increasing rates. So let's say there's an event that's 180 days from today that would fall in this last column. And let's say you have 10 houses in this group. We're basically saying, hey, if 6 of those 10 houses get booked for a specific date, super far out, let's increase the price for the rest of the houses by 10%. Or if 8 of the 10 houses are booked, let's increase the price for the last 2 by 25%. So this way, you're really reacting to that demand. You're constantly pushing those rates up a little bit higher to try to promote, to try to capitalize off of that higher demand. And then you know, hey, if it doesn't get booked, that's fine. That price will go down as we get closer to that date until someone finally books it here. So super helpful for providing discounts when things are slow, but then also identifying those specific dates with a lot of demand, increasing rates there automatically. Last things too, last minute premiums if demand is high. So if you are in a busy market, say St. George, Utah, where you're seeing 90% of the market, 95% of the market fill up in the summer season. Maybe in your case, if you still have a property available, you're catering towards those travelers who didn't make plans and now are stuck with limited options. So you might want to do a last minute premium since one of your property is one of the only properties that's left on the market here. Otherwise, orphan day premiums, these are super helpful. So orphan days, those are basically any gaps in between bookings. We do have automations here in PriceLabs where you can say, hey, for any gaps between reservations. So let's say any 3-night gaps or any 4-night gaps, 5-night gaps, however you want to structure this, you can say actually increase my prices for those gaps that pop up. Now, increasing rates, that's something I typically only recommend in the high season. The thought here is if any cancellations creep up, let's say someone was scheduled to come, they had a flexible cancellation policy. So 2 weeks before the booking date, they try to cancel on you. If there's super limited supply in the market, that could be a good opportunity to even charge a little bit more for those dates and make sure that they're not getting the kind of reserved rate that you were advertising, way back in May. They're getting that really peak summer rate now that you see that the market is totally full. So either automate that, or if you just keep an eye on your bookings, keep an eye on those cancellations whenever you get a cancellation when you're already in your high season. Definitely bump up that price, re-look at what the market's charging, look at that occupancy, and definitely be making those adjustments pretty actively here. Alrighty, number 8, we're getting close here, everyone. Thanks for bearing with me. Question coming in, will occupancy tactics override your customizations? So if I have gradual set up that is supposed to discount, will it increase prices when most of my properties are booked? Yes, so a lot of our customizations layer on top of each other, which is good to point out here. So if you, for instance, have gradual discounts set up in PriceLabs and, last minute you're discounting your properties by 20%, our occupancy-based adjustments would layer on top of that. So this can be both good and bad. If you have that 20% discount kicking in the last week, let's say, and you're still sitting completely empty, we would discount by an additional 15% if this was running here. Now, that's not typically bad to stack discounts because we're saying, yes, you do have a 20% discount in place, but you're still empty. So there's probably a reason you're probably still priced a little too high. Let's discount it even further here. Of course, that price would bottom out at any minimum that you have set in PriceLabs. You can set minimums for different seasons in the year, so you always do have that protection in place where you're not going lower than you're comfortable with. Same thing goes with premiums. If you want to say, hey, I do have that last minute discount kicking in, but if I'm already 80% full, I want to, maybe increase my rates, try to drive a little higher price here. That's totally possible. Now you put this premium on top of that discount, they'll either cancel out or your rates will go up here. So good way of doing it. Otherwise, you can completely turn off our last minute discounts and purely have these rules kind of automate everything for you here. Awesome. No, thank you for the questions. Great. Next comment, getting more bookings further out. So in most markets, as I was saying earlier, a lot of people have been experiencing their length of stay window really shrinking on them. So more bookings are happening last minute. And a question I always hear is, hey, it's good that I'm getting booked, but I don't necessarily love the stress of having an empty portfolio and hoping that I'm going to fill it this week. Otherwise, I'm not making any revenue here. So first thing to check, is there demand for far out dates? So really looking at these demand graphs that I was showing and tracking, hey, for your neighborhood, for your bedroom type in particular, what is demand looking like? So this is one property I manage where there's definitely, we typically see an uptick in demand in the last week. The last 2 weeks definitely see an uptick in demand, but we are seeing that bookings are happening pretty much through February, even though it's a pretty low percentage. So here, demand isn't great, but I mean, if you're seeing that, hey, 50% of the market's filling up a month from now, but I'm only getting bookings in the last week, there's probably an issue with your pricing. There's some adjustment that you can make to try to push this further out here. So first question, is there demand further out? If your market, you're seeing, hey, 2 weeks out, everything drops to 10% occupancy, don't worry, fill your calendar in the last week here. That's just how it's going to be. What I would track, if there are bookings further out and you're not receiving any share of those bookings, I would track kind of the difference between your price and the market's price for those further dates here. So what we're seeing here, down at the bottom, we have this portfolio's occupancy compared to the market's occupancy. And at the top here, we have the green line being the portfolio's price compared to the different percentiles of the market's price here. So here, where my occupancy is outpacing the market, I'm doing stronger, I'm getting more bookings than the market is on average. My rates are also lower than, what the market is charging on average. As we get further out and my occupancy kind of dips down, I know the market dips down as well, but that's where my prices are a lot higher than where my market is. So if you're in a situation where you're not getting any bookings, let's say more than 2 weeks out, really look at how your rates compare to the market's rates more than 2 weeks out, because maybe you're only getting bookings last minute because of that last minute discount, which drops you into that bookable zone. And then outside of 2 weeks, when that discount isn't being applied, your rates might just be a little too high for the market. So really looking at that and optimizing for those further out dates and not just dropping your rates where, hey, I'm finally getting bookings last minute here. So this graph right here, this is part of our market, our portfolio analytics here. So this is that tool that I was talking about earlier, where we're basically taking your entire portfolio and just giving you analytics on what's going on. What's my revenue, my lead time, how many reservations are coming in for different day ranges here, tracking what listings are getting booked, what listings haven't been booked in a while, your different trends by date, by month, by day of week. That's all in here. And then at the very bottom, you can compare your data to the data from any market dashboards that you've ordered. So you can definitely use these in tandem. If you have your listings loaded into PriceLabs, portfolio analytics, this will be free for the rest of the year. So you can connect your Streamline account and compare your bookings to what you're seeing in those market dashboards here. So you don't need to be using dynamic pricing there. You can still compare your rates to that market rate and that market occupancy there. Awesome. So main things to note here, make sure you're priced competitively a little bit further out for those periods where you aren't getting any bookings, and then using your occupancy-based adjustments. So if you're really not getting any bookings, let's say more than a month out, more than 2 weeks out, you can set up those occupancy-based adjustments to say, hey, if I am still sitting empty, drop my rate to make my price more competitive. If I do start getting bookings there, start easing off on those discounts that we've been applying. So that can definitely push you in the right direction, but making sure from the get-go that you're priced relatively well here. Awesome. And yeah, definitely feel free to do these as manual updates, automate it, whatever works there. Great. Next tip, attracting longer stays. So if you're currently getting a lot of 2-night reservations, you've heard about those mystic midterm rentals that people are getting 2 weeks, months, 2 months booked. A couple of things to check here. So first thing to check, are there any longer stays in your market? Are people booking longer stays? So that's highlighted in our market dashboards. We do have our kind of length of stay versus booking window here. So here you'll be able to track, hey, what length of stays are guests typically booking? So in this market, it looks like bookings are predominantly 3 to 4 night stays, and there's a lot less demand for those kind of longer stays here. So if you saw, hey, there's no demand for anything over a week long, don't necessarily adjust your minimum stay strategy to require week-long bookings, since there's no one really looking for those in your market. But here, great tool for really checking, hey, how long are most people staying? Is there demand for those, longer stays? You can also filter by length of stay and booking window. So here we're saying based off of how far in advance people are booking, it's color coded by length of stay. So oftentimes I'll see drastic shifts where last minute we see a lot more, let's say 2-night and 1-night reservations here. And then as we get further out, maybe any bookings that come a month in advance, you might see for your market, hey, it's predominantly this purple portion. So 5 and 6 day bookings, or green where it's 7 to 14 day bookings, and so on. So looking at your market, seeing if there is a shift anywhere where, hey, further out people do book longer stays, then you can use those dynamic minimum stays to make that your cutoff and target those longer stays kind of further out there. Next thing to check, are weekly and monthly discounts common in your market? So this can be something that really sets you apart from the competition. So you might see, hey, not many people are offering a weekly or monthly discount. That's that percentage of listings, so that blue. But a lot of people are booking listings for those, or a lot of bookings, a lot of longer bookings are coming in for those listings that do have those weekly and monthly discounts present. So one thing to check when you're looking at this, a lot of times this can be a little bit misleading. So here you'd say, hey, sorry, let me sneak around my monitor. So you'd say 11 to 15% discount. That's getting the most bookings, and not as many people are booking a 30% discount here. That seems strange. That's not saying, hey, a lower discount attracts more people. What you'll definitely want to look at, if you hover over any of these, you'll see the base nightly price that was booked. In a lot of cases, people who are offering the 30 and 40% discounts, they might have higher base prices set. So the final price after that 40% discount is applied might still be higher than that 11 to 15% discount. So here where we're seeing this huge disparity, I think when I hovered, the price that they were setting was extremely competitive, and then they had that 11% discount on top of that. So these tools here, they'll highlight, hey, for your market, what discounts are people setting, and what is their starting price that discount is being applied to. So definitely something to check out. Make sure your discounts are competitive for the market, especially if you are targeting those longer stays here. Great. And then a quick rule of thumb for kind of calculating the maximum long-term discount you would want to offer. So if you take 100%, if you subtract your expected occupancy, so let's say you expect to fill this month 75% full, that would mean that the revenue you take offering a 25% monthly discount would be the same as the revenue you're getting from taking a only short stays that aren't discounting and filling up your calendar 75% here. Now, things to consider, of course, more wear and tear, more work on your end, just managing all the guests, managing all of your cleaners, making sure everything's functioning perfectly here. The risk of not filling, to that goal of 75% that you might have, all things to consider when you are setting that monthly discount. But if, we're not taking into account any of your costs, any of your kind of intangibles here, good rule of thumb, 100 minus expected occupancy, that's as aggressive as you would want to go for monthly discounts. So if you do get inquiry, someone says, hey, I want to book 2 months, can you shoot down the price by 30%? If you think you're going to reach 80% occupancy of both months, do not offer that 30% discount, since you'll be, underpricing yourself by 10%, unless of course, that decreased management has its own benefits for you here. Great. And then last thing before you can stop listening to me talk, I told Mike I'd be running for 30 minutes. It looks like we're already at 45 here. But managing your pacing for weekdays versus weekends. So this is something I've seen in so many markets here. I wish I had a screenshot to show you how drastic this is. A lot of the time, I'll have customers come into PriceLabs where their markets are largely getting booked as weekend destinations. And in the low season, that's something that we definitely see, where we'll get bookings on Friday night and Saturday night, and then the rest of the nights are going to be 100% empty. It's a little scary to see that. So definitely a few things you can do to, a few changes you can make. So if you're already in a situation where your weekends are getting booked, let's say 2 months in advance, and your weekdays are sitting completely empty, my thought is that you're probably underpricing your weekends. So if you're already using a dynamic pricing provider that should be doing this for you, and it's not quite cutting it, that's an adjustment you can make in PriceLabs. So if you're saying, hey, I'm letting you guys kind of steer the boat, everything's working pretty well, I'm getting great occupancy on the weekends, but I think I can go a little further, you can come in here and say, hey, for all of my listings in this area, let's take my Friday and my Saturday, increase it by an additional 20% to see if bookings keep coming in. So I would increase that by 20%. Let your demand hopefully die down a little bit, see if bookings keep coming in, and if this trend continues, keep increasing that day of week pricing adjustment, keep increasing it until that pacing slows down a little bit. And at that point, you should be capturing kind of that high end of the revenue without having a lot of users who are a lot of guests who are saying, hey, I would have paid even more for this, but good thing it's only priced at, let's say, $300 a night here. So next tip, if you're looking to target those longer stays, so let's say you're saying, hey, only weekends get booked, I really want to get someone in there for a week. No one's staying at the property during the week anyways, so not a big issue to fill those dates even at a reduced rate, since you're not adding any cleanings. Typically you might not want someone to stay for a night at $40 or $50 a night, but if they're pairing that with your weekend, that could be an extra couple $100 of revenue for a listing that would have sat empty. So what you can be doing there, go in, say, hey, my weekdays that aren't getting booked, let's decrease them pretty drastically here. Let's drop their price by 30%. This way, if someone is looking for a longer term stay, your final price becomes a lot more attractive. Otherwise, if someone only books that weekend, they're still paying that high rate and your weekdays are still sitting empty. So there, you could come up here and say, hey, I want a 4-night minimum on my weekdays. So now I don't want someone booking one random weekday. Since the price is lower, I do want a slightly higher minimum stay there. You can also separate your minimum price for your weekdays versus weekends. So you have one lower minimum for your weekdays, one higher minimum for your weekends. That way you do have those kind of safety nets going into play there. Alrighty, reading a question from Ryan coming in here. Can we set weekly and monthly discounts in Streamline to calculate based off of PriceLabs' nightly rate adjustments? Yes. So Mike, correct me if I'm incorrect, but Streamline should have a setting that basically says, hey, take the rates that PriceLabs is sending over, and if someone books a week-long reservation, drop that price by 15% for the reservation here.
Yes, I think that's correct, but you probably want to confirm that with your customer care team and ask them that question.
Awesome. Perfect. Great. Now, one more kind of strategy for kind of extending your weekends a little bit. So currently, let's say only Friday and Saturday are getting booked. That's 2 nights that are getting booked. The question becomes, hey, what can I do to get a third night booked. So if you were to increase that by one night, so now each weekend gets a 3-night booking instead of 2-night booking, I mean, that's essentially a 50% bump in your occupancy, at least. Maybe not revenue if that final day is a little less expensive here. But what you can do, this has come super in handy here. You could say, hey, set a minimum stay restriction for, let's say we have a 2-night minimum for our weekdays. You can say, hey, set a 3-night minimum stay restriction for my weekends. So here someone would have to book either Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or Friday, Saturday, Sunday. You're blocking anyone from booking just Friday, Saturday, which might be the most common booking, but maybe there's still demand in your market for that stays that include that extra night there. So you're reserving your listing for those longer stays. And then you could say, hey, if I'm not receiving the booking within the last week or 10 days or 2 weeks here, take that weekend minimum stay and drop it back down to 2 so that I still fill that weekend. So here we're prioritizing the longer stay. And then last minute, we're dropping it down to allow that 2-night booking that you know will get booked on that weekend here. Ooh, perfect. And yeah, that's most of it. So I ended up going the full hour here. Again, a few things I wanted to highlight here. If you do want to try PriceLabs, if you're interested in either our dynamic pricing, our market dashboards, our portfolio analytics, I'll be sending out a follow-up email a little bit later here just to show you how you can get started. Dynamic pricing, we do offer a 30-day free trial to anyone signing up. So I'll send out instructions how to do that. Otherwise, head to hello.pricelabs.co and get started there. Super simple. Market dashboards, we do offer one free market dashboard for 30 days if you do connect your Streamline account to PriceLabs here. Otherwise, portfolio analytics, they will be free for the next 12 months for any Streamline customers here. Otherwise, if you are with HostAway, we are offering that as well here.
No worries, that happens. We got a comment from Randy, great talk. I am gonna have to edit that slide out of our recording though, that's for sure.
Yep. Let's do it.
Great job, great presentation, Oliver. Some great tips. If he can give you tips that can save you money just through this, imagine what they can do if you sign up with them. So don't leave any more money on the table. Make sure that you're using a strategy, and please take a look at PriceLabs.
Perfect. Yeah. Everyone, thanks so much for joining us. I know we're low on time here.
There's one, looks like a question came in. I think you answered the one from Neil, correct?
I believe so. Yep.
Neil gave you a testimonial. Love PriceLabs. We have 72 units and they're awesome. We have another anonymous attendee. Question, how does PriceLabs determine our market demand? Is it based off of other companies' industries that also have PriceLabs?
That is a great question. So all of our market demand data will be based off of all of the listings in your area. So this is based off of all of the Airbnb listings. This isn't based off of just PriceLabs customers, it's the entire market. So here, if you went to our kind of market data tab for any listings that you have loaded in, you can see what competitors we're pulling from. Here, it's a pretty short list since we filtered by 3 bedrooms, but all Airbnb listings kind of closest to you here.
Neil said, hey, wait, you didn't answer my question.
Yeah, I'm rereading the question here to make sure we got that.
You want to read through that one?
Okay, perfect. So if we have 50% more on weekend pricing, but we also have a discount of 10% off for weekend bookings, 30 days or more out to drive early bookings, what is the order? How does PriceLabs get to that final price? Yes. Thank you, Neil. That question I missed. So if, let's say you say, hey, increase my minimum price by 50% for all weekends, and then discount my minimum price by 10% for all weekends that are outside of 60 days, let's say, we're first increasing that minimum price by 50% and then decreasing by 10%. So it would go from 100, let's say that's your start point, plus 50% to 150, minus 10% to 135 there. So that's kind of the order of the application.
Looks like we have a couple more if we can fill them in before the top of the hour. How long until Verbo data is included?
So I was originally promised January, At this point, I will say by Q2. I strongly believe we'll have Verbo in there. And then another question about Verbo data and how long it's there. Perfect. Yeah, by Q2 is my rough guess. Hopefully not too much longer than that. And then last question from Neil. Neil, I will shoot you an email. Let's maybe hop on a call here just to make sure. You've had a lot of questions. I want to make sure we've got them all taken care of here. Yes, so it is an additional discount on top of that 50% markup there. Awesome. And I believe that is all the questions.
So we just want to thank you everyone for attending. Great job again, Oliver, and everybody have a great rest of your day.
Thanks so much, Mike.